My presentation title is a work in progress. I have considered other titles like paddling in and out of the landscape or paddling in and out of the wilderness. I want to explore the notion that our language creates reality and influences how humans understand that reality. The activities and terms we use on canoe trips engage us in places in different ways. They shape our perceptions as canoeists. Each of these titles convey a unique perspective. They result in various levels of comprehension and comfort. My work at Queen's University, coordinating the Outdoor and Experiential Education program, means I assess teacher candidates' descriptions of the value of various outdoor activities. Working at a university can be like balancing a tippy canoe as you pull up current. My job is to ultimately teach critical thinking skills to future educators. At times, this is the best job in the world, paddling with the flow, basking in the sunshine. But sometimes it is more like struggling up a steep, rocky portage on a narrow point with a 36-foot-long canoe. Engaging in theoretical ideas can be a messy, miserable, but necessary task. So my presentation is about some ideas and experiences that keep us afloat. Provide refuge on long lake crossings when you can barely see the far shoreline where you are to land, the wilderness of ideology. At the beginning of the school year, I use this image with teacher candidates to aid their understanding of what outdoor education is. I ask them to focus upon only one image, either the faces or the vase. They are to hold on to one image until they hear me say switch, and then they are to focus on the other image. Let's try. Switch. 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 For some, it is easy. For others, it is hard to control their perception upon command. I then lead them into an explanation about the Inuit blanket toss game. This game arose from the need of Inuit hunters to find elevation in a flat landscape so they could spot their game in the distance. It was devised that one hunter would climb on a stretched sealskin blanket and be tossed into the air by those who encircled the skin. Trying this experience brought them the desired new perspective of the world and joy. This game acts as a metaphor for what outdoor education is about. Their job as educators is to help others conquer their fear, climb onto the blanket, and try to see the world in a new way. Ultimately, by seeing things in a new way, they develop a practice in encountering joy. Educators cannot control what other people perceive, but they can use words and introduce terms to help try and guide others into new experiences and ways of knowing. Learning to be open to new understandings can be scary, perplexing, and difficult. But we must remember it can also bring a sense of mystery and joy to our lives. My professor Neil Everton explained that a fish never knows it lives in water until it is out of the water. He explains the many different understandings of the term nature and what it may be like to perceive the world without this term. He elaborated on the idea pollution can only exist when a person perceives themselves to be separate from the world. For who would pollute themselves? I encourage teacher candidates to shape experiences and use language so they can play with such concepts. As teachers, they need to be careful with the terms, stories, and activities they use with others because each embodies a different way of understanding the world. Each of these terms, if I had used them in my title, would have made you think differently. I want to share some of the things I do, my favorite canoeing activities, my bag of tricks to aid outdoor educators' critical thinking skills. It is like blanket tossing up some conceptual ideas. My first real opening to the power in language to shape our reality came from trying to learn Ojibwe. In Anishinaabe Mode, words are animate or inanimate, somewhat like how in French terms can be masculine or feminine. Guitars are animate. They could sing. Birch bark is animate. It is the skin of a tree. but why are rocks and stones animate? Being aware that rocks can only be perceived as animate by Anishinaabe speakers means that paddling by this rock on the Churchill River creates a perplexing moment. According to local stories, this rock moved from the middle of the lake up onto the land one day. Do I believe this happened? Am I capable of perceiving such reality? How fluent a native speaker must I be to comprehend a rock taking such action? I was accompanied to my first pictographs by an Anishinaabe friend. He instructed me to feed the rock with tobacco. He shared his reality when he told me how the handprint was where a man had entered the rock. My young mind wanted to be open to understanding such ideas, but such thinking is hard work for English speakers like myself. This bowl of rocks, collected from many canoe trips, has sparked many lively debate. I've used it with my neighbor, a Queen's University environmental law professor, to describe how laws would be different if everyone only spoke an Indigenous language instead of English. After an argument with a geology professor, I assembled a reading kit for a course on animate rocks. It includes the description of why Andy Fisher entered Queen's geology program because he had a childhood love of rocks, but he dropped out his first year when he realized becoming a geologist meant he was expected to smash rocks in order to study them. He then transferred into the field of psychology and today leads Vision Quests. My partner is a geologist. He keeps my scientific mind sharp by explaining in great depth the chemistry of metamorphic rocks. I read him children's literature to ensure his imagination and thinking reflexes stay nimble. Similar to language, stories have an amazing ability to engage us with different realities. That Chickadee Feeling is a story about a very bored child who is taken into the forest by their mother to discover that chickadee feeling. I like the way the author describes and uses terms that confirm a person's connection with the world. Growing up immersed in such stories of oneness and legends that describe the why associated with plants, animals, and landforms mean the land we travel becomes a noisy place. Everything reminds us of a lesson or a reason. When I paddle by the hills around Thunder Bay, I remember that the topography is actually the tracks left by Nanabojo, the sleeping giant. Another practice I have on canoe trips is to verb the world with color. In the Anishinaabe language, colors are verbs, not adjectives. Verbing of a place makes great sense when one recognizes how the landscape is greening through the process of photosynthesis. The land can also be pinking, oranging, bluing, and purpling if you let it. It actually pulses out rainbows of color. Many times I have found myself with Native people who are offering tobacco, coins, cloth, and matches as gestures, a form of payment to the land for what it has provided. It took me many years of participating in this act to become truly comfortable with it. Today, I might discuss this practice with teacher candidates and then leave time and space to decide what feels appropriate for them to do. I encourage them to consider what the gesture is about. Usually, a group, when asked, will decide that a bit of chocolate or coffee are appropriate contemporary offerings. Eating wild food changes your dreams. I once heard a medicine man say this. I then realized that the only time I had ever had dreams where I had flown like a bird had come after I had eaten duck and wild rice soup. I seldom remember my dreams, but the dreams were so vivid. I can still recall the feel of water on my webbed feet as I landed. Wild duck is the only thing I've ever really eaten in my life that has actually flown. I always support the eating of country food. I went to graduate school to study craft making as a pedagogy for environmental awareness. Some of my most meaningful moments in life had come from the satisfaction of making my own tools. I am on a personal quest to make all my own canoe tripping gear as a way of feeling I really belong in this world. Sometimes I name the equipment I make. Instinct is my canoe, and intuition is my toboggan. Knowing how to be camouflaged in the bush is good practice to have. I chose the color marine gray for instinct as soon as I heard it was the easiest color to camouflage in the woods. Later, I was to learn that Tom Thompson had a very heavy canoe because he painted it many times, trying to find the exact color he wanted. I am sure he was just trying to blend into the North Woods. Aim to consider wherever you paddle your home, but remember the full-time residents for whom it is their only home. With Queen's students, I offer a wide variety of curriculum activities to sample and then reflect upon. Here are a few of my favorite experiences. Attempt to make fire by friction. Ask them if this is a primitive act or a primitive art. What makes the recapitulation of an ancient primal moment in human evolution good education? Why should we offer such experience to others during an era of matches and abundant electrical power? On a canoe scavenger hunt list, have a discussion on the concept of land ownership. Such a discussion will allow students to vent about the lack of public wilderness spaces, the limitation of park regulations, and the different concepts of land ownership that exist abroad. Students will write papers about how this discussion was their most significant learning experience at field camp. Whoever knew that trying to determine who was the first person to own land and who gave them the right to own land could be so thought-provoking. By asking, why have we come to hold the ability to think that land, water, and air can be owned? We will invite new perspectives and change our understanding. Field camp involves 4 campfires, a quiet tea-sipping one, a typical gathering of songs and skits, and a final evening of reflection. The 3rd campfire is what I dub the deep ecology evening. It is designed to get people high on the ideological blanket toss, to take them to the edge of their comfort zone. Organizers are instructed to use as few words as possible and to aim to get people up drumming and dancing around the fire. This evening frequently leaves many in the class on a high as they release their long inner caged animal. For a few, it is a struggle to find meaning by imitating animals, or they think they are culturally appropriated by drumming anything. I tease out of them explanations for why they can readily sing television theme songs, but not pretend they are an animal. I prod their ability to articulate why they did or did not want to drum and dance. What in this campfire scared or intrigued them? Information technology devices of all sorts have crept into the outdoor education domain. A few years ago, I simply discussed the merits and problems of virtual camping. This year, students took their own virtual trips to the moon and Mars. This form of travel has less CO2 emissions, I was informed. Today, teacher candidates can readily move between the virtual and real in their chosen curriculum methods. But I was a bit taken aback when the primitive skills class ended with learning how to do virtual archery. I look for a variety of skill sets in the students that are accepted into the OE program. This year, I accepted a student whose application listed 13-year-old boy as a language. I knew she was an avid video game player. Her application emphasized that she had her feet in both the real and virtual worlds. In her eco-autobiography, she describes the stages of her changing relationship with the world as she developed. First, she had a normal childhood, playing in her big backyard. Then she entered her pink pill stage, where she was placed on antidepressants. Next came her removal from the drug as she found a safe place to retreat in video gaming. At this point in her presentation, she described a scene from one of her video games. She emphasized how she spent hours just roaming the beautiful countryside. She ended her biography with an explanation about being sent to camp, where she rekindled her childhood love of the outdoors, realized she hadn't been in her backyard for years, and became interested in wilderness therapy as a work. Her description of video gaming triggered a memory for me of a theory I found useful to describing our growing separation from the world, yet desire for seeking a sense of oneness. Most of what I'm going to share with you next comes from her providing me with a crash course into video gaming. The 30 pages of PowerPoint slides and video clips she provided also crashed my computer last week. She gave me approval to share her story. In a nutshell, the theory that her video game description triggered in me came from Morris Berman's writing about participatory consciousness. This is his term for being at one with the world, so totally engulfed in nature you don't need a term for it. He describes that some past cultures and all young children have this sense of participatory consciousness. Unfortunately, some kind of repression happens to most of us as we develop, typically from schooling. And we take one of three paths. The first one, most people become repressed and don't really know it. The second, a few recognize their repression and try to break through it, like the mad artist stereotype. The third, a few lucky people who are able to move through the repression relatively unharmed. Much of Berman's descriptions of these three areas are described using examples from visual art. Smooth sublimation is described using children's art because this creativity is carefree and lacks a sense of perspective. Indigenous art is used because of the way everything is intertwined and energy lines represent the invisible. Some Japanese art is highlighted because it emphasizes an existence of being engulfed in the world. People are never front and center like in a portrait. Instead, they are tiny and hard to find. My students' description of finding relaxation in being lost in a beautiful landscape of the video gaming world triggered my memory of this theory. Was her gaming world somehow allowing her to have a smooth sublimation into a oneness with the world, what I seek from canoe tripping? When she agreed to find me some images for this presentation, I asked her to find me the ones that were, if possible, related to canoeing. This flying ship is a reoccurring element in the longest and well-known franchise called Final Fantasy. She told me it was steampunk inspired. What is steampunk? I immediately asked. She quickly Googled steampunk, pulled up some images to help me understand this counterculture movement that makes things by hand. It holds a sense of nostalgia for the time around the Industrial Revolution, hence the term steam before punk. After our conversation, I did what all good canoeists would do. I Googled steampunk boats. There was lots of examples. Most seem still in the designing stages, but get a load of what I got when I specifically Googled steampunk canoe. Imagine this paddling by you in the future. My student also shared some of the history and environmental mindset embedded in the development of video games. She explained that Soshita Tercheri, the creator of Pokemon, grew up in the rural suburbs of Tokyo. He created Pokemon to give modern children the chance to hunt for insects like he had once loved to do as a child. Aware of my interest in making things, she told me about the very popular game called Minecraft. With very simple tools, a player must mine the earth of dirt, wood, and stone and begin to create things. Individuals might make such things as this virtual house. As more and more time is spent mining and making things, whole cities are resulting. Each building made by hundreds of people spending hundreds of hours a month paving over virtual wilderness to create virtual cities. What time? How much time do you have? Okay.
About 7 minutes.
Okay. I need to see. So I'm going to play you a little bit of a video clip just to give you the sense, if I could do this. Oh, it just jumped it. Okay. This image here is of a paintbrush that circles a dead tree. And let's try again. Oh, sorry.
That one. This one's the video?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So this just gives you a sense of the way that they're developing and the scenes that you can do. The goal of this is to climb up virtual mountains. And she was telling me that you often just spend a lot of time pausing and looking at the different views. Okay, the next one. Okay, so this one here, she just kind of remember the scene of a dead tree with a swirl. And then what happens in it is you have a paintbrush. The next one will play it. And you can actually make trees blossom. So you're going to see this in a second. And then you can also keep going along. And if you need something like a lily pad to land on when you cross a river, you simply swish your paintbrush and you'll get a big lily pad. And you can jump and land on it and just keep going on. Okay. Yeah. You can just put that. Oh, yeah. 1 minute and 30 seconds. This final scene offers what I'm sure you have all been waiting for, a virtual canoe trip with fishing success. No, they're canoeing. That's fine. Can you hear that? Okay. Okay, that's okay. There's gentle background music, and it was pointed out to me that it's typically very relaxing music, even though many video games have quite quick actions in them. You can go into YouTube and watch other people comment and give you guidance for how to paddle the rapids. Basically, just don't bother paddling. You won't hit the walls. As I watch these, my mind races with many questions. What navigational skills are being developed? How is a handheld device mimicking a paddle stroke? What effect does background music have on me instead of natural sounds? Will I get seasick in this virtual world? What does this mean for the next generation that has decreased their outdoor playtime and increased their screen time? Will virtual canoeing replace real canoeing? That's okay. We can just turn it off. Yeah. Okay, so good. Yeah. I am going to continue to wonder what this means for young people who are decreasing their time outdoors. Will the next generation spend more time virtually canoeing instead of real canoeing? How will this alter their sense of reality if their message only comes through the medium of digital technology? One can never be too sure if the person steering the big canoe we are all in knows what they are doing and where to go. One can never be too sure what will emerge when the mist lifts. I still have some hard work ahead of me. I need to portage and paddle my way to the next lake of quiet introspection. Watch the colors change as the land transitions between more dusk and dawns of understanding. Through it all, I will just keep paddling in and out of realities, in and out of different ways of knowing, in and out of comprehension that brings me joy. Thank you.